All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited for today's event. We have a couple of rock stars in the house today. We've got Alex Farling, and Alex, your glasses kind of fit that rock star look, right? You know, it's almost kind of Bono-ish. Pretty cool stuff, right? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, I said the on sale at Best Buy look. That's the look I was going for.
Awesome.
That kind of rock star.
And lead singer, Marnie Stockman.
Oh, in the land of things, you don't want to find out if that's true or not.
So we got a great event today. Want to do a little bit more of an introduction with Marnie and Alex. Alex, can you give me a little background about yourself and Lifecycle Insights?
Sure. About 16 and a half years ago, I started a small little mom and pop break fix computer shop, just like so many other people in this business. And we quickly transitioned into small business support. And 2008 came around and we transitioned into becoming an MSP. And over the period of the last 45 or so days, I've actually sold the MSP to focus on Lifecycle Insights. But along the way, I identified a problem that we were having, and Marnie and I got together with some fantastic developers to build a product that helped us faster and easier organize and pull data out of the tools that MSP use today to basically make better sales presentations and deliver a more consistent sales experience.
Excellent. And so you found a fit for a problem that you had, and you had so much passion for that, you decided to go 100% with that. And
yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So that just means that the growth of Lifecycle Insights has gotten to a point where you're able to do that and just spend all of your time to be able to put these solutions together.
Yeah, we've had some really exciting adventures these last couple of months, and you're just growing left and right and bringing on new partners left and right. So yeah, it was almost to the point where I had to focus on one or the other, and cybersecurity being what it is, and me being much more of a sales owner than a technical owner at my MSP, it wasn't a hard decision. So
very good. Now Marnie, so a little background about yourself and how long you've been with Lifecycle and what you've been doing and all that fun stuff.
Sure. So my background is actually in education, and I landed in an ed tech company that focused on assessment and analytics. And then even longer ago background than that, Alex and I have been playing volleyball together probably since I was, I don't know,
25 years, I don't know, forever.
Yeah. Let's just assume it was 25 years and we were playing as toddlers.
Yes.
So in discussions, when Alex brought the problem sort of QBRs and reporting around it, and really the issue of having data in all of these disparate systems, we were able to take the EdTech space platforms that we worked for and sort of apply the aggregate reporting and then assessment ideas to the MSP space. So, you know, Lifecycle Insights aggregates data and makes it very consumable for clients of MSPs, right? The red, yellow, green reporting. So very, very user-friendly, and then added the assessment platform. So my background, oddly enough, is in assessments, but usually the scary kind for children that a lot of people are doing from home right now.
Sure.
And it landed in now the MSP space. So Lifecycle Insights started a couple of years ago, and Alex and I are two of the founding members of it.
Very cool. Now, what I want to do before we get into our topics is I'd like to ask Alex a couple more questions here. Alex, tell me a little bit about, I guess, what you see in the IT landscape today and where you see it going for MSPs.
Well, you know, the big thing that we keep seeing over and over is that new business acquisition is getting difficult. It's tough times for folks to present to new prospects, to get in front of new prospects. You know, there just aren't the chamber meetings and the BNIs and the events to go have a table at that used to exist for so many MSPs. So they're trying to really, they're trying to do one of two things. They're trying to find creative ways to bring on new business, but they're also trying to find ways to sell deeper into their existing client base to make that client base more profitable. So we're seeing a couple of different patterns there between MSPs and maybe where they're at in their maturity model. You've got the folks who are just starting out, who really gaining new business is everything, and the folks who have been around a long time, who are able to maybe sell deeper into their client base to overcome some of the 2020 challenges.
Excellent. And what are some of your predictions for the rest of 2020?
Oh boy, come on now. Nobody's been able to guess what's going to happen in 2020. That's not fair to anybody. My crystal ball ain't that good. But what I do see is that as more and more MSPs are getting a more mature business assessment process, and as law enforcement and states and municipalities are dipping their toe into regulating MSPs, that assessments and being able to prove that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and having repeatable processes is going to become more and more important. We're looking at Louisiana, I think it was, who was the first one to dip their toe in the legal waters to say that you had to become a certified MSP to work with government agencies. We have CMMC coming around the corner that the federal government's going to start to mandate on anybody who's an MSP for a defense contractor. And I think what we're going to find is states following suit, and even individual municipalities if they don't think their state has done enough.
Excellent. So with that being said, what I'd like to do is let's kick off our meeting here. And we're going to start off. So just a refresher for everybody, what we're here for today is we're going to be talking about prospecting with pre-sales assessment. And this is something that Lifecycle Insights is able to do and assist with. But I want to learn more about your angle on pre-sales assessments, and so we'll kick it off with Alex.
Sure. I'm going to throw some slides up here and let everybody follow the bouncing ball. So you should see a slide deck, or at least a slide out of the deck with your smiling face on it.
Yep.
All right. So for those of us who know us, we've been through, this is our second webinar with Dan and crew. If you were around for the last one, you'll remember that we talked about how to work assessments into your existing client base and what that means and what it's worth. Today we're going to talk about closing new prospects with a similar but a pre-sales assessment type. We're going to talk about how delivering that assessment really makes a big difference. How the presentation on that assessment could mean the difference between winning a good deal or maybe even highlighting a customer who might be the wrong customer who you don't want to take on. If you have questions as we go, please feel free to type them in the chat. Marnie's real good at poking me and prodding me to address the ones as they come along that matter. And then when we end, we do have some time for Q&A as well. So don't hesitate to bring that stuff up. If you were here for the last one, I think you remember us talking about strategic business reviews, how to dial in your process and improve your customer adoption. We're firm believers that every MSP kind of has their own individual proven process, right? We don't all use the same antivirus or don't all use the same firewall, but all of us have come up with a solution that allows us to pull from our solution stack a bunch of tools that we know play nice together and that deliver a consistent result. And we're used to hearing the chocolate cake analogy, right? If you make a chocolate cake, but you leave your cocoa out, you haven't really made a chocolate cake and it's not going to taste very well. And IT is not very different. So IT is one of those places where we find the right recipe, the right ingredients to put together a recipe that seems to work. Last time we met, we used a very similar slide to this one with an infographic that kind of describes the process that we use over at Lifecycle Insights and that I used pretty successfully at my MSP. It starts with discovery in the top left-hand corner. And you'll see that under discovery, typically when you're working with a current customer, discovery is data collection. It comes out of your RMM tool. It comes from engaging with your help desk and your technical team, and it comes out of your documentation. So you know a lot about the customers who you're already working with to do a QBR. We'll talk a little bit today about how that's different with a prospect. Assessing the results. This is in the QBR space. This is a VCIO and an engineer sitting down talking about the customer, people who have some knowledge and some experience with the customer, knowing where the pain intersects with the technology issues, and being able to take that pain and turn it into a technology fix. Delivering the report. This is literally putting the risk assessment in front of the customer and getting them to buy in. We talk about how to evaluate risk and how it is based on the technology that's at play in the environment. Remediate. This is, of course, where all your money lives. This is where we're selling projects. This is where we're dialing folks into our proven process to use our tools and our suite to consume more and more of the services that the MSP sells. And then verify, of course, is where we review the deployed solutions, work with the client to confirm that the pain has really been reduced or eliminated, and figure out if we're making continued progress. This cycle is literally one that we repeat throughout the life of the client, which is something that we call the cycle of continuous improvement. It's something you should be working through with all of your clients for as long as you have them. The problem is, this all works fantastic with existing customers, but what happens when you have a new prospect on the phone? Somehow this morning the phone rings, you find yourself in front of a new prospect. Doesn't matter if your marketing worked, if somebody Googled you and found you or in the yellow pages, or you got a referral, you have to know what to do next. And now we find ourselves having to do data collection without an RMM deployed, without techs who have gone through the network and who have spent time working with the customer to fix their problems, who know the intricacies of that particular network. And we also find ourselves needing a compelling way to present how we do things different from anyone else in the industry, maybe from the incumbent provider or from the industry as a whole. And we need to build some kind of a repeatable process so that we close new sales. Because just like technology, sales is a process. We need to work on delivering the same thing over and over so that we can refine it and improve results. So today we're going to talk about a couple of strategies. We're going to build that repeatable approach to data collection, which means we can successfully feed the pre-sales assessment process. If you don't have the data, you can't feed the assessment process. We'll build an actual pre-sales assessment. We'll talk about why we use it, and at the end of the call, we will email out everyone a template that we use for a base pre-sales assessment. And then we'll talk about why every time we do a pre-sales assessment, we do it twice, not just once. And then we'll give you a little bit of a bonus about halfway through here. We'll sneak in some extra content. The importance of a follow-up call before your final presentation meeting. This is a pretty straightforward trick, but it's one that's often overthought and or not thought of at all. And then we're going to talk about how to build a presentation or build and present the assessment, basically so that we can present a project that makes you money, an onboarding that gets your customer in line with what you're doing, and make sure that you actually get a win at the sales table instead of a thanks for the proposal, we'll give it some thought and we'll come back to you. So let's take a start by looking at pre-sales data collection. Pre-sales data collection, obviously, you don't have all your tools in place. So we have to do a couple of things. I learned this from my days working with Chartec way back in the day. When we were flying out to Bakersfield to do their training classes. And one of the things they were big on that has really worked well for us is user interviews. We would go out and meet with the client and sit face-to-face with a large number of employees for the client, depending on their size. If they're 100 users, you're not going to sit with everyone. If they're 10 or 15 users, we're going to sit with everyone. We don't have the benefit of RMM software, but we do have the benefit of sending our folks out there to do some data collection as well. So what we're going to do is go out with a tool and do some data collection so that we can get the necessary insight into the environment. While we're out there learning about the customer, we want to make sure we pick up on things that really sound like pain to us. For the examples for today, we're going to say we went out and met with a client and sat with Sally in accounting, who told us that her biggest frustration is that come billing time, her system runs a little slow and she just doesn't get everything done in a day, and the ownership and the leadership is always on her about the amount of overtime she puts in that last week of the month when she's doing billing. We've also talked to a C-level executive or two who have fear of a data breach. They've been watching a little too much 60 Minutes, and we want to make sure that we address that in our presentation to them. These real-world examples are important, mainly because pain and fear are what drive customer adoption. They're what drive customer purchases, but they're also information that we can only gain from these in-person interviews. They're not something that we can go out and run a network scanning tool to identify, but they are disproportionately important in getting the sale closed. After we've done the in-person interviews, we still want to follow up and send an engineer on site to get the lay of the land. They can use a network assessment tool, network scanning tool. You guys know several of them out there on the market. We don't have to name them, but they also need to get their eyes on the environment. So we're going to scan, learn everything we can digitally about the environment. We're going to take a look at things like servers and switches and firewalls, maybe wireless access points, structured cabling. Look for the things that look like they could cause us problems once we're there as a vendor. Get the make and model info of this hardware as best you can and use that to try and determine end of life, or if any of this equipment's due for replacement. Because we really don't want to set that terrible precedent of we brought on the client and telling them that this equipment was all okay. It's even harder to get rid of equipment once you told the client it was good enough and you could service them than it is after you've been in working with the client for a little while. It's much easier to knock that stuff out in the beginning. Now that we've collected all this information, whoever went out and did the interview, and in some places this is a salesperson, in some places this is a VCIO who's acting as a salesperson, and in small MSPs, it's the owner. They're going to meet with a sales engineer, and they're going to meet to discuss and talk about the needs of the customer. We're literally going to talk about these things so that we can build out 2 assessments for the customer. The status quo assessment, which is what happens if we change nothing. This assessment will, and our typical assessment platform scores everything in red, yellow, green. The status quo assessment will be littered with yellow and red. Then we'll build out a post-project assessment. And this is where we talk about how the grass is always greener. The post-project assessment will be much cleaner. It'll show that we've come in and deployed our proven process over top of the customer's environment. We may have added a cybersecurity platform. We may have added a firewall. We may have added email filtering, user training. We'll replace some outdated hardware and software on the way in the door. This is our onboarding project. And this second assessment really shows the customer what it's like to be working with you. It's really their first look into what's it like to be a customer of insert MSP name here. Every MSP is a little bit different. Our assessment at my MSP is probably not the same as the assessment that you're going to use in your MSP. We will give you a template before we get done today. I firmly expect that to be a starting point and not your be all and end all of assessment. So take it, customize it, make it your own, and really turn it into something that that means something to you. With that said, I'm going to pull up a sample of an assessment, and this is basically a dump of a baseline assessment that we would do with a customer as we're first coming in the door with them. This assessment's broken out into 3 sections. We have hardware, we have continuity of operations, and then we have strategic line items. So we're going to go through each of these and score them, red, yellow, green. In the Lifecycle Insights platform, this is as easy as clicking a button, but we wanted everybody to have a takeaway here today, even those who are not customers of ours. This template is available in our platform in a click-through version that gives you all the tools built in. So if you are a customer, go into your platform, and you should, at the end of the day today, be able to import this as an assessment in our platform. It's important to note that on this pre-sales assessment, we're looking at about 30 questions. That's not to say that yours can't be 37 or it couldn't be 25. What it means is that you're probably not doing the 110 controls that are in NIST 800-171. You're probably not doing the over 200 controls that are in CMMC version 5. You're doing a much smaller number. To give you guys an example, in my MSP, a typical QBR assessment was somewhere between 90 and 110 questions, and we're only asking 30 when we get started because we just don't know the customer as well. We're not dialed into their Office 365. We don't have access to every rule in the firewall and those kind of things. We've run preliminary assessments, and we've come in and answered to those assessments. So it's also important that as you talk to the customer, you make them aware this is something that's going to grow over time. We do a little bit of it up front, but we're going to be doing more and more with assessments to continue to improve your standing, improve your stature as we go. Some examples. We're pulling things like servers and workstations. We're looking at their firewall, their UTM security appliance. We're looking at switches and things like that. But down here, we're also looking at some things like directory services. Do they have something in use to handle user authentication? What we're doing is we're pulling from the most important and most standard things that you're going to find across most of your customer environments, and then throw in some freebies that you're going to get a win on with your proven process. So when you come in with your all-included process or your all-inclusive product, if you offer dark web monitoring, make sure you show it there, because that's something that not a lot of customers have, but that's going to be green once they sign up with you. There's really easy things like policies and procedures. A lot of companies won't have a documented media disposal policy. Build yourself a standardized one, deliver it to the customer the day they sign up with you, and follow that process through your help desk to help them destroy old hard drives when they retire a machine. And now you get an easy win on an assessment item. So there's a lot of things to think about from that standpoint. We'll send you the entire assessment so that you can think through it, but don't hesitate to tweak it, break it, make it your own. As like I said, we really do believe that that every MSP is a little custom and a little different, and that's kind of what makes us all special and what makes us each a better fit for some customers than others. Once we get out and take all the information, we're going to need to build that assessment and then follow up with our client. So once we have all the data, we've built the assessment, we know what the customer needs, we know how much we're going to need to charge them a month to cover our costs. This is when we do our follow-up call with the customer. And this should usually be a phone call. In today's world, it could be a Zoom meeting. This should not be a face-to-face meeting because we don't want to get tied up into too many details on it. This is a quick and easy in and out to make sure that you don't have any surprises coming. This is when we review Sally in accounting, right? Let's go back and talk about her. Hey, Mr. Customer, I just need to clear a few things up with you. The conversation we had about Sally in accounting and her getting overtime all the time, can you just refresh my memory? Was that only at the end of the month, or is that only at certain times of the year? How big of an impact really is that on your business? Is it creating any PR problems with other people knowing she's getting overtime when she's not supposed to, et cetera, right? Go over all the little details. Hey, we talked about the concern of a data breach. If that were to happen to you, if all of your data were breached and posted on a billboard on the side of the road, what would that do to your business? Oh man, that sounds painful. And repeat that pain back to them. Let them feel it. Let them hear it again. What we're doing right now is proving to them that we understand their business and preparing them for that next meeting with us. But don't get off the phone with them before we ask this one last question. Okay. The last thing that we need to do is establish a budget with this customer. When I was going out and doing these on-sites myself, I would try and get the budget during the interview process. But if you're not able to, then make this last phone call and get the customer hooked on a budget right here. What you're going to tell them is, look, we've really assessed a lot of the issues that we see in your business. And while we're not seeing anything out of the ordinary from what we see with new customers, we do have some things we're really concerned about. We'll review them with you when we get there. We've worked with a lot of customers in your situation, and we've been able to help them improve their standing with IT. And that's a really important statement. We've worked with a lot of customers who are in a very similar situation to you. Take that line home with you today. We've worked with a lot of customers who have had a very similar situation to you, and we've been able to help them fix their problems. Now, you told me you were spending about $1,000 a month in IT, but in my experience, customers in your situation have had to spend somewhere between $1,800 and $2,200 a month to remediate their IT problems. If I come back to you next week with a number like that, are you going to throw me out of your office, or can we still be friends? And you find a way to answer that question the way that you like. I've got this little self-deprecating humor that I can say things in different ways. You've got to find a way to say it, but you have to ask that question. And if the customer says yes, that number is within my budget, you're set. You know your answer. You knew how much you needed to spend. You're going to walk in the door with a quote. You know they're already okay with the price. If you can't agree on price, you need to take another review of the customer and see which of your solutions they can do without, or see if them not being able to take the full solution stack means that they're just not a customer. What you're doing here is finding out early whether or not this is somebody who you want to spend a lot of time and energy on. If the customer doesn't adopt your full stack and sticks with some of their pains, are they still a supportable customer to you? And that's an important question to ask. And then finally, presenting your findings. We're going to go meet with the client a few days after this phone call, and we're going to be showing them 3 key things. We're going to show them the status quo assessment. What does their environment look like today? We're going to show them an onboarding project outline. This is a real rough and tumble, high-level view of what we're going to have to do for work in order to bring this customer in. We're going to give them a price. We're going to give them some big project bullet points. We'll dive into the details when we deliver our scope of work later. And then we're going to show them a post-onboarding assessment. This is, Mr. Customer, after you're working with us, what does your life look like? So moving on to that. This is the first thing that you're going to present to them. And we start with, Mr. Customer, this is where we are today. This is the status quo. This is what it looks like if you don't change a thing. These colors shouldn't sit well with a client who's a good fit. They'll probably get a little testy with you about it, and that's good. That's a healthy reaction. They don't know what they don't know, and now that they know, we can work to improve it. You'll review these line items in detail. And you remember when I was flipping through the actual assessment template, you're going to review each and every one of these that's in red and yellow with the customer. You don't necessarily have to review all of the green ones. They don't necessarily need a pat on the back for everything that they're doing right, but you're going to see more red than green, and you're going to find customers who have a lot to work on, and that's okay. Then we do the project for the onboarding, and this is a templated project onboarding that comes right out of our system. This is where, Mr. Customer, if we go through these steps, you'll alleviate these red scores out of the platform, out of the assessment. But we'll also give you additional security, stability, and reliability in your environment. This red speaks to how and why we fix the pain that we've been seeing, right? So we're going to specifically be talking down here about the current device is a router and it doesn't have monitoring capabilities required out of a modern UTM, right? We're actually talking about solutions and what it takes to fix. This should speak to the pain that the customers have. Once we have talked through the project, we're going to show them what it's like once we've not only done the project work, but applied the proven process for our MSP. Now, remember when I said the grass is always greener? It really is greener. And if you look here, you can see it in black, white, gray, and green. We're showing the customer what it looks like to have their pain removed from working with us. This is a pretty standard assessment. This is a pretty standard result. Don't be surprised when your customers come in the 40s, 50s, and 60s and turn immediately green when you lay your complete product stack over top of them. But I want to take a quick dive right now into our platform to show you guys how we got from a pre-sales assessment to a project, because this is something we do that's pretty slick, and that is not Lifecycle Insights. This is something we do that's pretty slick. So we go through and build out an assessment for a customer, and you'll see here kind of the summary of the project. We show the item detail here, which shows each of the items and how we answered them. So as far as operating systems go, this customer had some operating systems that weren't vendor supported. But we had a lot of issues here in backup and disaster recovery. Their backups are requiring human intervention. We're not backing up Office 365. We don't have a documented continuity plan. So there's some things here we can fix. And they're pretty easy hits that we're probably going to get with our onboarding. So I'm going to filter this down so that we're only looking at the items that are at risk or need attention. And we're going to go pull a couple of them and make a project real fast, just to show you guys how easy this is. We're going to go grab the 3 items that revolve around backups. And then there was one more I was going to grab. How about email archiving? There we go. So we're going to grab these 4 since they all involve data retention. And we're going to go create a project from these. We literally click a button. It starts to build a project. We give our project a name. We're actually going to list out here which items from the assessment get resolved. We're able to put in here how much labor it's going to cost and if any materials are involved. If this were one where where it was an existing customer and we were replacing hardware, we'd be able to link the actual hardware items here and show that cost in here as well. If we know when we plan to onboard this customer, then we're going to say, hey, you know what, Mr. Customer, if you sign on the dotted line today, we'll begin your onboarding on the 14th and finish it on the 18th. And we can go in and add contacts to it, of course, just to show the customer who's going to need to be involved in this to make this project happen. And save the project. Literally right from here, I can print the report that we were looking at previously. I can simply, and I want to show you one more thing here. We can also now do a comparison of the before and after on this project, and you'll see this in a slide a little bit later. But we give you the ability to compare assessments over time. One of the things that we'll talk about, or that we talk about a lot, is the ability to take that pre-sales assessment or even just that first onboarding assessment and show how the customer's growing over time in your platform. Over time, you'll add questions to your assessments, right? You'll get further into their Office 365 and you'll add questions related to that. We'll add entire sections to the categories and rank their performance. So you'll see a new category show up that's only on maybe the 2021 assessment, and then how they grow and improve through that category over time. So pretty interesting stuff. Projects, as far as that goes, the ability to print that project is as simple as driving right in here, and printing out that document. And I didn't put a ton of notes in it, but what we have now is one more project that we can take in and sit down with that customer and review in our pre-sales process. So that's what that piece of the platform looks like. Moving along.
So, Alex, if I could just jump in here a second.
Please.
You know, I just looking back, going through doing assessments, the incredible amount of time it takes. I think for most MSPs, we've all been there. You know, we go through, use multiple tools. We're using, you know, maybe using RMM, using an assessment tool that's out there. But you know, all that time it takes to collect that data, come up with an aggregate, and put it into a report. What you're showing me here just seems too easy.
Well, we did a lot of work to make it easy. Assessments is still one of the longer pieces in our product, right? We have a lot of tools around data delivery for a customer who's already yours, but assessments is still a click-through process. You have to answer all the questions. Where we make it quick and easy for you is that it's literally select a radio button, as opposed to having to mark up a spreadsheet and format it and keep it all pretty. So we do a lot to standardize the process so that you are literally doing a repeatable process. And that was one of the things that got me when I first got in this business, was that, you know, here we are, a company who we were on lab tech before it was Automate. We were like their 40th customer somewhere out. You know, they were working in Toledo, Ohio still when we bought that product. And we spent all this time writing scripts and you know, automation, building it into this platform. And then we would export from that, and we would export from ConnectWise, and we would export from all these other products and try and cobble together some kind of a report that we could use. And for folks who were supposed to be automation experts, the process drove me nutty. Right. So that was what really got me, and that was where, but the other thing was the stuff that I would do wasn't repeatable. So when I hired an account manager, he would immediately fail because he didn't have my decade of experience running the business and working with the customers. He was brand new to them all, and he didn't have the process. And it was really hard to give him 6 spreadsheets and go figure out how to cobble all these together. That's your process. That just doesn't work. So what this is about really is repeatable process and then reducing the amount of time it takes to deliver it. So no, I appreciate that point.
Absolutely.
So the next thing that we get into is the pitch, right? How we deliver this matters. And as I would hire account managers over the years, we tried promoting technicians, and they're way too techy, and they want to talk about nerd things, right? They talk about how many more gigabytes we can get in, cram into a computer, and how much more memory you can cram into it, or how fast an SSD we can cram into it, and the customer doesn't care, right? All the customer cares about is that thing that was slow. So we're going to talk about how we deliver this sales pitch, and what it really looks like is, Mr. Customer, over the last few days, we've extensively surveyed your staff. We brought in an engineer to review the technical aspects of your environment. We ran an assessment tool that went out and scanned your network and gave us some more information. And then we took everything that we gathered and we put it through our platform to help identify where technology is currently failing you, where it's currently falling short. And throughout that process, we answered about 30 technology items across 3 categories. And unfortunately, Mr. Customer, you're in the same boat that a lot of folks that we see. We're repeating that line that, Mr. Customer, don't feel bad. You're not the first one to go through this. It's not all roses and sunshine. You knew that. That's why you called us. But don't get discouraged. We work with companies like this all the time, and we know how to help you fix your problem. So as you review this assessment with the customer, you're just going to go back through the pain. Remember Sally in accounting, she's got that old PC, you're paying her some overtime, she's frustrated, you're overpaying her, and somehow it got out that she's making overtime and other people in the department are pissed. We can help you clean that up. You mentioned fear of a breach, and you know what? We found in our assessment that you're still using some Windows 7 and some Windows 10. That amplifies your risk of a breach by about 10-fold, and we really should address that, which is why we're recommending, and here's where we show the customer the project, right? In a combination with our proven process and the tools that we're going to bring to bear on your company, we're confident that this will put you in a better place. We're going to review the price estimate, right? You know, if you recall, we already discussed pricing on the phone. We've got customers in similar situations who had to increase their spend to fix these kind of problems. This is not new. You're not abnormal, but we agreed you're going to need to spend more money on this. I told you we were going to be somewhere between 18 and 2,200 bucks a month. Remember that, Mr. Customer? Well, yeah, I do. So we've reviewed this all. We've reviewed all this. We go over the proven, this proven process assessment, which is our secondary assessment, and we're basically going to say, look, Mr. Customer, this is where you live today, and this is where you're going to be when we get done. You don't need to carry in 2 full assessments and go through them all. In closing, you're literally going to present the front page of both assessments. Mr. Customer, when I bring my solutions to bear, you're going to go from a 62 to a 95 in the first section. You're going to go from a 62 to a 92 in the second section, and you're going to improve from a 45 to a 97 in the strategic category, because we're going to bring that many tools to bear on your environment. Now, the results on the left, those are what $1,000 a month gets you. So unfortunately, what we've learned is that you're underpaying. You're getting what you're paying for, and you're not paying for enough. The report on the right, this one's going to cost you about $19.50 a month. We kind of talked about pricing, and we said we'd be somewhere, we could be somewhere between 1,800 and 2,200. Good news for you, we're closer to the 1,800 than the 2,200. Does this look like something that if it could fix all of your problems, you'd be willing to sign up for? More and more of your customers are going to take an option like this when you set them side by side and show them what they're buying with their extra money. But that's only step one, right? Because we know that IT done right is continued improvement over time. Because once you set them up, you get them to a 95, next thing you know, the Chinese and the Russians are going to change their tactics. Somebody's going to release a new type of malware. A new Intel vulnerability is going to be released. There's going to be another problem. There's going to be another item that you have to add here, and things are going to backslide. So we need to be very clear with the customer. IT done right is continued improvement process, and we need to meet X number of times a year. Now, the industry calls them QBRs. We like to call them strategic business reviews because we don't always get to them quarterly. But we also think you should segment your clients. So take your clients who are 7 customers and not super technical. You can meet with them twice a year, maybe once a year. Take your customers who are in high compliance, medical, finance, those kinds of things. You're going to meet with them at least quarterly. But put that out up front, Mr. Customer. We're going to meet every so often, and we're going to talk about these things because technology is going to change. Green's going to slide back to yellow. Yellow is going to slide back to red. And if we don't continue to adjust as the world does around us, you'll just look like you do today on my watch 2 years from now. And that's not acceptable to me, and it shouldn't be acceptable to you. So additionally, as we work with you to gain more knowledge to your environment, we're also going to examine deeper and deeper into your network. So instead of assessing 30 questions, Mr. Customer, we're going to assess 100 on a quarterly basis. And by the time we've been with you for 2 years, we may assess 150.
If you don't mind me jumping in, Alex, I got a question for you. So when you take a look at this assessment, I mean, is it ever a point where you really get to all green? I mean, and what is the time it takes to?
I've never worked with a customer who got to all green. I've worked with customers who got to mostly green with a few acceptable risk items, which can still be yellow, or you can change whatever color you want. No, I've never worked with a customer who got to 100. Have you ever seen an IT environment that was 100% secure? Then that's the old joke, right? The only secure environment's the one that's unplugged from the wall and doesn't have a keyboard plugged into it, right? So it's always a game where you're playing against yourself and trying to improve over where you stood yesterday.
So kind of a going forward format. So if I'm a client and I say, okay, I see what you've presented to me. What is the plan and the process, and how long do you anticipate that it will take for me to get to that point, to get to all green?
And that depends on every customer, right? It depends on their budget, right? Because if they have all the money in the world to throw at it, we can get there a lot faster. If they're a nonprofit who plays the poor card all the time, it's going to take us longer to get them where they need to go. So really, that's as dependent on the customer as it is on the MSP. And it's okay for us to put that back on them, right? If you're, Mr. Customer, if you're willing to commit to a cycle of continuous improvement and continue to work with me on these things, we'll get there a whole lot faster than if you don't. But some of that depends on, is MSP specific too, right? How complex is their stack? How many things are they bringing to bear? And what does that particular MSP really consider to be good and healthy? Over time, we have assessments released in our platform for CMMC, NIST 800, some of those kind of things that you can also run And I think you'll see that in those, even perfect in those still has some holes that most MSPs would like to point out and say, well, yeah, but you could still have some better products or some better, you could still do something a little bit better. There's always things that are a continued work in progress.
I think what you pointed out on the slide is important, that you need to have this conversation as part of the pre-sales, that we're going to move you to green, but why we have to keep revisiting this, so they don't think like this project, we're one and done.
Yep.
And then I won't have to call you again for 10 more years when I decide to replace all
Nope.
of my.
And the question we should be asking is, Mr. Customer, are you willing to commit to a cycle of continued improvement, because I'm going to need you to come to the table to work with me on this, right? And if a customer says yes to that, what we're doing is signing a good quality customer who understands and now even expects to have strategic business reviews with you, instead of one that you're going to have to go drag them to the table. And we've all got the customer that we have to drag to the table because we didn't do enough of these early.
So I of course have had advanced peek at our pre-sales assessment, right? So I know one of the questions on there, but one of them is about that continual cycle and how often are you willing to come back to the table? So there were 3 satisfactory answers. I'm going to meet with this, we have a VCIO process, and we're going to do strategic business reviews annually, semi-annually, quarterly, et cetera. And all 3 of those could be acceptable, right, for a client. So what do you look at the beginning, in a pre-sales conversation to sort of segment your client? Because we've talked internally a lot about how to segment clients. What do you look at when you're filling that out?
A lot of it boils down to industry, right? Some industries are going to require that they be touched more often, and we get into military, anybody who's doing defense contracting and that kind of stuff. We get into medical and healthcare. Anybody who has PHI absolutely needs to meet more often. And anybody who's in finance, those always bubble right to the top for me. Legal's not far behind. But then you get into, we had a client at our MSP that was 100% cloud hosted in a remote desktop data center. So all they had on site was terminal servers and printers. And all they did was go into their finance software and print mailing labels and invoices. It was a factory, and it was a very non-technical factory. They literally made sprockets and cogs like you'd see on the Jetsons. So they were super low technology. There were 7 computers in the entire 20,000 square foot factory, and it just wasn't a complex environment. And we met with them once a year. So there's a little bit of what you're comfortable with, and there's a little bit of what industry and how is the customer built out that really matters.
You mentioned different industries. Are you creating a different assessment based on different industries, or are you using just a common generic that can fit all?
So I think that each MSP should be taking some of our standard assessments and making them their own. But that being said, we do have templates in there for NIST 800, for CMMC. I don't think we have a HIPAA template, and I don't know that we're going to put one in there anytime soon. But you could bring your HIPAA stuff in here and put it into the platform. That said, I'm kind of a believer that a doctor's office that needs to meet HIPAA compliance also needs to do a regular quarterly assessment. HIPAA only needs to be done once a year, but they should be doing a regular quarterly assessment outside, above and beyond HIPAA, because HIPAA is the bare minimums, not even necessarily the recommended best practices at this stage.
And the IRS form 4557.
Yep. IRS 4557 is another one that's in the platform. So it really just depends on where you're coming from. I'm a believer that a lot of these industry assessments are a once a year kind of thing, and that you're still going to want to be doing quarterly, like, hey, we need to talk about the things that the industry is doing, not that your industry is doing, right? Where the technology space is going versus where the tax accountant space is going.
So if I create a template and I've maybe modified it and customized it to my needs, or let's flip this around, maybe I'm looking for different assessments that others have created. Are these shareable? Can I, access?
We have some samples in the system today that are shareable or that are shared. And then we have on our roadmap, I think, for sometime next year to enhance that functionality so that folks can share approved assessments throughout the system.
And we certainly can do that on the back end. So if Dan, you said I work with, 3 other folks that we would all like to use this assessment, we're more than happy to share that for you for sure. And the other piece that I think is important is you can build any assessment from scratch in the system. So while we've got templates and a place for folks to start, we have one of our partners, like, they actually put all of their checklists for moving technology, you know, for moving a company's technology from one building to the other, for example, as a checklist so that folks can go through there. We've seen customer health inventories, right? We were focused today on the pre-sales assessment, you know, kind of from the lens of how Alex always presented it. But if you had your own version of it, for sure, you could create that from scratch.
Well, and when COVID started, we had folks looking at work from home assessments and customer health assessments where they were really trying to identify their customers who are at the biggest risk of failing, you know, due to COVID and becoming a financial strain on their MSP. So yeah, the assessment module is super flexible and built and designed to be that way. For the sake of today, we're going to send out what a pre-sales assessment looks like, but understand that anything that can be scored red, yellow, green, essentially, or even just good, bad, off, on, can be handled in our assessment platform and customized in there.
And you mentioned sort of the all-in model, right? That this, you know, if you're all in, certain things will turn green automatically. Can you talk about what this looks like for existing clients around sort of stack alignment or their proven process?
Well, you know, that depends as well on the MSP. You know, some MSPs signed up some customers 10 years ago, and then their solution stack has changed a ton since then, and maybe they haven't adopted all of those products out into their old customers who they were struggling to get to upsell. So those customers are going to have some red and some yellow, even though they're maybe on the MSP's old all-in product. And that's just, it's one of those things that if you listen to the talking heads in the industry, they'll tell you you should never have that. You shouldn't have that. In the real world, every MSP has some of those, and assessments are a great way to start to show the customer, hey, over time, technology has changed and you haven't kept up. You know, here is where your risk is, here's where your exposure is, and we'd like to deploy these additional products and services at an additional cost to get you where you need to be, but to bring you back up to a reasonable spend. And you know, probably 6 months before I sold my MSP, we took our biggest customer and added about 20% to their spend because they were a nonprofit who was never willing to spend the money, et cetera, et cetera. And they finally got a new CEO, and we were able to sit down and make this pitch with the right platform, with the right assessments, and bring them into the future, bring them up to speed with what we felt that they were supposed to have. So we get a lot of success stories back from our customers about how well that works.
I'm wondering too, how the clients, how they respond and react to a report like this, because you know, pretty much the way everybody's doing it now is you're taking a collection of different reports, putting it together, maybe you put it in a binder, and it's a little bit more of a hodgepodge.
Yep.
So what is the reaction in you know, from clients, prospects when they see a comprehensive, we'll call it pretty report, all in one?
Well, it certainly sets you apart from the guy who comes in with the printed out spreadsheet, and it definitely is going to show the customer that you're serious and that you mean business, but also that you understand their business, right? Because all these questions and answers can be customized and tailored right to their business, and we're also going to talk about things that, you know, if it's presented properly, we're going to talk about things that are key to their business, right? We keep circling back on the pain points that they brought up to us and showing them that we understand who they are, we understand how they do business, we understand what they need to do business. So this really, you know, it's a pretty presentation module. It gives you the ability to present red, yellow, green instead of, you know, coming in and talking about how many Core 2 Duo systems they still have in their network, right? Because the owner probably isn't technical enough to understand or care. So we kind of simplify it to a point where it's easier to present and easier to consume by high-level executives, and they get that you kind of understand their business because you're talking their language instead of talking IT speak.
Well, you know, and with that being said, I mean, when you take a look at a lot of the traditional reports, I think sometimes we want to just, you know, we feel as if more is better, that, you know, the more we can, you know, print out and you know, dump on their desk, we feel as if that's better, but
It's the thud factor, right? You walk in and they
yeah,
drop the reports on their desk, and the bigger the thud, the more information you gave them, right? And we all,
right.
at some point in our MSP, and even at the end, we used that infamous tool in the industry that runs the 700-page report, right, and brings it back to you. And we did. We ran that tool, but we
Yeah.
never presented it to the customer, right? It's that's for your nerds to use, to dissect, to give your VCIO or your salesperson the info that they need to present an English report, a report that can be spoken to from a CFO's point of view, from a CEO's point of view, that you can justify the spend, that you can show the customer where and how you're improving their experience. So you're kind of skipping ahead in my slides, but I'll skip ahead with you. One of the big questions really is, the big wrap up to this is, how does Lifecycle Insights help you guys through this process? And we kind of brought the process to close with that final assessment. But what do? We pulled data directly from all of your existing tools. So if you're working with an existing customer, we're going to get data from ConnectWise or Autotask, or from Synchro. We're going to get data from IT Glue if you use that instead. We pull data from Office 365. We give you places to import exports from Active Directory and things like that. But also, we standardize the process so that when you meet with a customer for the second time or the third time, the reports start to become comfortable. They're not digesting all new information every time. So then you can get down to the really strategic items and focus just on what's in the red and what's in the yellow and what really needs their attention, instead of them having to digest 25 pages every time you walk in the room. And then we give you the ability to really customize it. The product is super flexible. I've said it more than once. We don't believe any two MSPs are the same. We really believe that everyone has their own secret sauce, and you need a solution that's customizable to your secret sauce and to your methods of doing business. People do business with you because of you, and we wanted to build a platform that you could make your own and deliver a product and deliver an end product to your customer that looks like something that you would have done had you had all the capabilities and all the time in the world without it. And then affordability. I mean, we built a product that really should pay for itself after just a few meetings with clients. You should be able to pay for this with project sales and with increased MRR almost immediately.
Well, one thing that I was thinking about is, the data that we present to our clients a lot of times is, it's deer in headlights, right? Just because,
Yep.
The type of information that we're providing. And we obviously don't want to get into the technical aspect because, number one, they don't care. Number two, they don't understand it. But with the red, yellow, green, it really can connect with them, because that's when they look at that, they're like, okay, red is bad. Yellow, well, we got something to work on. Green is good. It really, I think, simplifies that for the prospect, because, we all know that the sales process, can be lengthy at times.
Yes.
And
Yep.
just because they're not understanding what we've presented, because there is a level of, confusion to what the technical pieces are. And this just breaks it down easy for them.
Right. I mean, we had it in our MSP down to a 3 to 4. It was a 4 contact sales cycle, right? You go out and meet with the client the first time. You go out and literally just interview them, take notes, steal information, learn everything you can about them. Do as much of that face-to-face, human interview stuff as you can. Send an engineer back out to do the assessment. Call with a follow-up phone call, and then deliver a sales pitch that is non-technical, that speaks red, yellow, green, and you can close business in 4 touches. And you should be able to do it before you leave the room. It shouldn't be one of these things where you have to walk away and hope that they'll call you or hope that they'll get back to you. It really is a process that if you practice it, and like anything else, practice it and then go back and review and see how you did and see where you may have broken down and improve it every time. I can tell you, every one of the sales that I didn't follow up on in my MSP, I didn't get. So there's a lot to be said for just having a sales process in your MSP, even if it's not a good one. Just having a sales process that you follow over and over and continue to refine makes you better than probably 80 or 90% of MSPs that are out there. And in order to have a real process, you have to have a real tool. We got a question out here. Do you integrate with LionGuard or BrightGauge? As of right now, we do not integrate with either. We are having some conversations with LionGuard, but I don't think it's beyond conversation at this point. So I don't want to commit to anything. But we love the folks at LionGuard. We think they make an awesome product. We do find that folks who use LionGuard have probably the best data in our system. So one of the big problems that we have when somebody comes in is that their data quality isn't necessarily top notch. They've entered data into their PSA or into their document management system a little haphazard over the years. And our system has a way of calling that out when we start printing off asset lists and budget reports and things like that. So the LionGuard folks do come to us with an advantage, even though we don't necessarily have a direct integration with them at this time. But
Alex, I forgot to add a slide with the coupon code.
yeah. Well, I guess we can move on to the Q&A slide, and you can come up with a coupon code.
Yeah, well, I've got, yeah, if you can stop sharing your screen so I can start sharing mine.
Okay.
I will put a few things in the chat.
And for those out there, if you do have questions, please drop them in the chat.
Absolutely. So, so first, we do have a basic trial plan. So if you sign up for the basic plan, you have 5 active customers free for 30 days, and you can add assessments into those. If you're interested in a demo, if you go to lifecycleinsights.io, if you hit the contact us page, you'll get a calendar link. The pricing page is where you'll find the trial. And then most importantly for everything MSP is that coupon code gets $50 off the first 3 months once it's a paid subscription. So if you're interested, feel free to grab that. I will put them in the chat as well.
And for clarification, that's $50 off a month for the first 3 months, right?
Yeah, each of the first 3 months. Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you very much for
Yep.
that benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm putting this in the chat as well in case folks want to grab it.
We have a raised hand out here. Can we, Dan, were you raising your hand so we could give you the chance to talk? Let's play with this toy here and see what kind of a mess we can make. Dan, I sent you a request to unmute. So if you were raising your hand intentionally, come on and chat with us.
It's been up for a while, so maybe he was.
Maybe he got bored and left me.
And
I do have a question. What is one of the most unique things that an MSP has done with your assessments, and what have they built that's different, and you're just like, wow, that's solid?
So I've seen a couple interesting checklists from one that comes to mind right out of the gate, because we have seen a lot of risk assessments. So traditional things that we see are risk assessments and the stack alignment, right? So like put in your tools. As a matter of fact, while I've got my screen up, let me click into it real quick. This is sort of an example of selling further into your stack, right? So if you list your technology, so this would be an internal assessment, which I bet is probably what Alex is going to say, some of the internal assessments that we've seen. So if you had put in there the tools that you offer, and I'll make this bigger, that your technology preferences and each of your clients, as you look across a row, that red makes it very obvious where you can sell further into your client. And if you look down, or sorry, that's down a column. If you look across a row, that would be, okay, looks like we're out selling VoIP phones today, right? Because everybody's red on that row type of thing. But I've seen, so we see a lot of those. I've seen some interesting checklists. I mentioned the moving day checklist. Alex, I know you've talked to a few about their internal assessments, about how they're actually.
Yeah, there's a good number of MSPs who have built a non-customer facing assessment. And in the assessment, what they're doing is documenting, they'll have one section of the assessment that is monthly, one section of the assessment that's quarterly, and one section that's annual. And they'll say, hey, you know what, annually, we're going to go out and make sure that in Office 365, this checkbox is checked and this mail flow rule is properly configured and nobody's messed with it and and it's where it belongs. But maybe monthly, we want to go check and take a backup of the firewall config. So they've got these advanced internal checklists that are really just making sure that everything's getting done for the client that they've promised. So they're using them simply as internal. Hey, Do we have everything deployed that we're supposed to have at a customer? And when we go back and look at it, has it not changed? Has it stayed properly deployed? And does it all look right?
I love that. I mean, just the whole process aspect of it. When we take a look at, wanting to put process in place, a lot of times it's just all in our head. And
oh yeah, and we see a OneNote document or a Evernote document or whatever that people are trying to pull together to make it work. And all that really turns into over time is one more place where you have business data stashed, and one more place that you can't report out of. So the goal was to pull it all into a place where you can make some sense of it and do something useful with it when it comes time to go meet with the customer.
And I think also too, there's, and I've seen just some inconsistencies. So without a tool like this, when you're putting together an assessment, especially in a pre-sales assessment, it's one of those things that, hey, I'm going to put it together this way this time, and then the next time I'm doing something different. And there's no consistency, which can break that sales process.
Well, and imagine that process, but imagine that process in the MSP that's scaling to $2 and $3 and $4 million and has, one account manager for every $1 million in revenue that they have. And imagine if I can't do that the same way 3 times in a row myself, imagine trying to get, 3 and 4 and 5 individuals to do it the same way. So some of our best feedback has been from CIOs who have a team of VCIOs who work under them, or guys who are scaling to that point, right? They're hiring their first person who's not the owner who's going to go do the assessment. And they're petrified of hiring this guy who maybe isn't as technology savvy as the rest of their engineering team, or maybe isn't as sales savvy as the rest of their, as their sales team. They might be moving a technician into this VCIO role. And it just is a tool that gives people, I don't want to say a crutch because that sounds like a bad word, but it gives you some guide rails to keep you on task and on point. And those are the things that we've had so much success with. And inside the platform, you can see from Marnie's screen that we have everything down to a scheduler and a budget forecast builder and things like that we didn't get into on today's webinar. And if you want to check them out in a demo, that's awesome. We wanted to talk about pre-sales because I think it's something that's important to the industry right now. And I'm going to use the dreaded, in the new normal. But it's something that everybody's asking about. We're seeing tons of questions about it on social media. So we wanted to come out and really talk specifically to that. But, there's a lot more to the platform if you're doing strategic business reviews with your customers on the regular, or if you're obligated to give them some sort of replacement and end of life reporting or some sort of budget forecast. I mean, my MSP was in business for 16 years, 15 years before we were able to give a customer a technology budget. That's inexcusable, but the tools just didn't exist.
Absolutely.
So,
and I know we want to be respectful of time, and I just want to double check, make sure Dan, did you want to jump in and ask a question, or are you all set? All right, I think we're set there. All right, guys, incredible amount of information here today. We've got the, in the chat, there is the discount code that gets you the $50 off each month for the first 3 months. And any other information that you want to throw out to everybody?
I think that covers it. There's a free trial on the website, so don't hesitate to go check that out either. You don't have to, that's up there, five clients free for 30 days. So don't hesitate to come check it out. And if you do sign up for the free trial, that includes a free onboarding. So you don't have to, it's not a bait and switch. If you come in for 30 days free, we will spend time with you to get you onboarded and make sure you're in the platform and comfortable using it. So customer satisfaction is job one over here.
Awesome. Well, Marnie, Alex, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having us, Tim. We appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And all of our attendees, we would like to thank you for joining us today. And everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you guys all soon. Take care.
Thanks, Dan.